Those of us who've got ideas about where society should be going are often accused of trying to impose our opinions or morality on other people. But to say that totally ignores the way any healthy society works. Basically, most normal people have opinions about what kind of society they want to live in. Then there are mechanisms to aggregate those opinions and produce social norms. Then we're all expected to generally go along with those norms, which may sound a bit boring until you realise that one of our norms is violence should be a last resort, whereas in samurai society the norm was, if you get in my way, I'll cut you in half. So, living in a society with the right kind of norms can make a hell of a difference to your quality of life. And obviously the mechanisms used to arrive at these norms might be good or bad, everything from a witch hunt to a well-researched documentary. It might involve a sideways look or a change to the criminal law. Because the norms of any society are just human constructs. So you can slag a particular norm for being bigoted or oppressive or whatever, and you can slag my preferred way of arriving at those norms. You can even point out, which I would agree with, that our norms should be flexible, open-minded, and based on a live and let live attitude. But what's out of order is to automatically describe anyone who's got opinions about the society they want to live in as a busybody who's trying to tell other people how to live their lives. Because what's behind that attitude is a simplistic myth of a world where we're all just atomized individuals who only interact by choosing what to buy and sell in the free market. A myth which ignores the obvious fact that we're not all free and equal. In reality, we exist in a world full of power imbalances, which form around institutions such as banks and corporations, and the main mechanism they use to exercise their power over people's lives is money. So that's why when someone pays for sex, it stops being a purely personal matter and becomes exactly the kind of activity which it is appropriate for other people to have an opinion about. And that translates, on the level of society, to a series of norms which we defend by, for example, passing a law to criminalise those who try to buy sex. And some people might say, well, I'm happy selling my body, so why shouldn't I? But the reason would be that if the rest of us are trying to change the society we're living in, your individual choice might be interfering with that. So it might be antisocial. Yes, shock horror, all you individualists out there. You just might have to adapt a bit to the society you're living in. No, really, try it sometime. It's called interacting with other people, and it can be a very life-affirming experience. Of course, social norms aren't always a good thing, but neither are they always a bad thing. And that's all I want to establish here. In other words, sometimes it is perfectly reasonable to say, stop doing that, it's antisocial. And the other thing worth bearing in mind is that changes often occur on a social rather than an individual level. For example, in the 1930s, people in Britain basically accepted that they could only have private health care. But then various things happened to Britain as a society, like the solidarity generated by being at war. So by 1947, when they brought in the National Health Service, almost everyone was into it. My point being that we got the National Health Service because Britain had become a different society, not because a load of individuals made different choices in the same society. And part of getting that different society was people expressing their opinions, organising campaigns, telling doctors, no, you can't carry on treating people privately, etc. In fact, it was those opinions, norms and political campaigns which got us the NHS, instead of genocide, dictatorship, or any one of the many ways a society can go after a long, hard war. And finally, the fact that I've got an opinion about people being paid for sex doesn't actually make me unique. Even the libertarians object to children being used for sex, so that's their opinion. And they might say that's different because it's about consenting adults. But consenting adults is just another opinion. One I share, as it happens, but not the opinion of, say, Socrates, who was very fond of young guys. So he would presumably have told these modern individualists to mind their own business if they started moralizing about consenting adults. In other words, having opinions about society is actually something we all do, to a greater or lesser extent. So it comes down to this. Yes, you are a unique individual, but that's not all you are. You're also part of a society, and your choice affects how that society will develop. So, not surprisingly, society might have opinions about your individual choices, especially when they involve the main tool which capitalism uses to push their agenda, which is, of course, cold hard cash.